Good morning.
Good morning, Susan. How are you? Once again, I've just come in from shoveling.
You guys just are getting dumped on.
We are. It's so pretty. I love it, and the dog loves it. Snow is like his favorite thing. He doesn't like the salt that people put down on the
Well, of course
pavement,
not.
but loves the snow. Yeah, I supposedly we're gonna have another like super snowy winter, the snowiest we've had in a while, which is fine as long as it doesn't screw up any of my travel plans. I'm good with it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we finally got snow here. It's been expected, and then finally we got like 7 inches here where I live, which is nice. And then today is actually supposed to be like in the 40s or 50s, so it'll all start melting here pretty soon.
Yeah, ours is it's cold. I think it'll stick around. But the fun thing though is it does bring in, well, I don't know if they're connected, but it does bring in some fun birds. I'm going to pretend that it does. So I actually was down at the lake a couple days ago and saw my very first long-tailed duck,
Oh,
which I
cool.
have never seen before, and Lapland longspurs. So, that was fun. I froze my little fingers off trying to take
Oh, I
pictures of
bet.
them because it was, I think, around 7 or 8 degrees.
Yikes.
Uh, but it was fun. I'm always good for when
A
when
little
new things.
outing.
Yeah, people don't realize that Chicago actually is on a migration corridor, and so we get a ton of birds at all seasons coming through they come off of Lake Michigan and then they take a little rest just a couple miles from my house. So I go down and check them out.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I actually haven't done much the last couple of weeks. I got something in my lungs, and that took me a couple of weeks to get over. So yeah, my Thanksgiving was quiet. But there I was going to tell you about this bird real quick, and I thought of you. And of course, I did not rush out to the lake, but there was a bird from that typically hangs around Florida that for whatever reason was here in Colorado during the fall, right before we got cold and everything, and all the local photographers were all running out. A wood stork, maybe?
A wood stork. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay. With some sort of stork. Um,
Okay.
and anyway, there was a bunch of chatter, and I thought of you
Yeah.
immediately. Like, you definitely would have been one of the ones around the lake trying to capture it. So,
Probably. I won't go too far. I'll go checking out something if it is relatively convenient. So a lot of times when the things come in, they literally go to the same general area in Chicago, which is just a couple miles from my house. So
is it a lake or something?
yeah, it's
Oh,
an area right on Lake Michigan.
okay.
Literally a beach, a Chicago beach, where there is a bird sanctuary that juts out a little bit into the lake. So a lot of times, if birds are trying to get over the lake, they stop there because it's the first land that they see. I won't go super far. I'm not a chaser in that
Oh, okay.
sense, but if it's relatively convenient, I will do it.
Yeah.
Or I guess it depends a little bit on the bird too. There's some birds I would go a little bit further for.
Yeah, like a snowy owl.
Well, yeah, snowy owls were kind of convenient, and I got very lucky because I saw those on the day they arrived, and then it became this whole big thing, and
Yeah.
the park district had to shut off the area, and anyway, they have left now, although there could be more coming, I think.
Well, with your weather, just dips down from Canada, and they're like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I know, and they sit
it's
right on the beach. Like
yeah,
that's the wild thing is these owls are very easy to see if you know where they are. They're not hiding in the trees. They are literally sitting out on the beach or on the pier, and they're just absolutely beautiful.
yeah.
Just
All right.
just gorgeous, and I've always wanted to see one. So but it wasn't a chase. I literally, like I said, it's sometimes I walk down there. It's just 2.5 miles from my house. So yeah,
Well,
that
I
was
was
amazing.
jealous. I have not seen one in the wild yet, so that's still on my bucket list.
If you get the opportunity, it is worth spending the time and going out of your way to see if you like birds. It
Yeah.
is definitely for me that was a big one. Things like Lapland longspurs, which are essentially pretty sparrows, were a bonus when I went down to see long-tailed duck, but I probably wouldn't go out of my way to find them.
Yeah,
But still, they were nice.
that's good.
I know. Anyway, so now that we
We're,
bored people with bird talk,
that's all right. I
I
mean, we
know
both, there's a lot of people that probably enjoy photography of all sorts here. So,
that is true.
yeah.
There
So,
was actually, there is actually a photo related issue that I wanted to raise before we get into today's primary topic, and that is there was another couple of cloud outages over the last month since we taped last. I think they were both from Cloudflare, which most people have probably never heard of, but it is one of the storage systems that is the back end to a lot of the software that you use on a regular basis. I believe Zoom might be one of them that went down from that one for a little bit. There were a whole bunch. So I had some of my software yet again went out and was unavailable. It doesn't mean that anything was lost, like has sometimes happened in the past. So nothing was lost, but it was inaccessible.
right.
So I just wanted to raise again for our listeners our favorite topic of backup because when those things went down this month, it was very annoying to me, obviously, because I couldn't do some of the work I wanted to do. And thus, I went down to the lake and instead looked for long-tailed ducks. Um, but it does make me think every single time that happens about my backups and are they up to date and are they recent and are they secure in the sense of do I have enough of them? So I thought we could just talk about that for a couple minutes about what you should have for the ideal backup system. And we have talked about it before, but we're going to raise it again.
Yeah. Well,
So,
everybody has to figure out what they're willing to pay for. I find sometimes, a subscription cost or an ongoing cost like that monthly is a burden of backing up to the cloud. Some people don't want to pay 99 cents a month to back up to Google or whatever. And so if you're not willing to do that, you've got to then do it physically on multiple hard drives at home, which still does not prevent loss because, as we know, homes can be blown away by tornadoes and drift away by floods and all sorts of things. So you could store it at someone else's home, make a copy and do that. But cloud, there's so many inexpensive ways to back up
mhm,
through cloud that depending on what it is you're trying to do, and really Backblaze is one that I know you use and I use and we recommend. Um, $99 to back up your entire
mhm,
computer for a year. I don't, that's got to be like the cheapest thing I've ever seen.
mhm,
So if you can't or are unable to want to back up your photos to a specific cloud service that backs up photos, then consider backing up your entire computer.
mhm. I think, ideally people should do both, which I know you do
Yeah.
both. And you and I probably are uber backed up. But yeah, Backblaze is, to me, that's kind of a no-brainer. And
Yeah.
Backblaze, and neither one of us work for Backblaze. I'll just put that out there. We don't get any money from them. Um, but what it does is it scans your computer in real time and literally is just constantly backing up everything that is on it. And you can also set it to back up external drives. So if you store some things on an external drive, because you don't have room on your main computer hard drive, you can have that plugged in and Backblaze will scan that up too for the same $99. It's
Yep.
included. So I actually have it on several computers and it backs up all my computers all the time. I also have some drives. I also have, I have iCloud turned on. I don't use Apple Photos as my primary photo storage. I use Mylio for that, but I have iCloud turned on. So I have iCloud, I have Mylio connected to a couple drives for my photos. I have key documents in Trustworthy. So all of my things are backed up in triplicate. And the key is not to have everything in one place, as we've talked about before.
Yep.
Yeah. So those
Yeah.
drives, if you don't want to use the cloud, bring one to your sister's house, your office,
Absolutely.
wherever. so that they're
Yeah.
not all in the same place.
But if you're paying for a Microsoft account, I mean, people
Mhm.
sometimes don't realize that they may already be paying for a cloud solution. So I always try and see, if you're on a Windows machine and they're asking you to pay for a membership, it could be just, $50 a year or something. You
Mm.
might get, a terabyte of OneDrive cloud
Yep.
storage and you may not be using it. So, investigate what you're already paying for, and see how you can take advantage of that without paying for another service. But
Yeah,
um,
the same is true for iCloud. A lot of people don't know that if you're paying for, f storage in Apple for your photos, you also have iCloud. So a lot of people have that 2 terabyte plan, and they don't realize if you have a Mac, you can go on your Mac and there's 2 terabytes of cloud storage for
Yep.
you right there that you can put other things into. So
Yep.
you're absolutely right. Investigate what you might have. Do a little cloud audit, subscription audit, see what you're already paying for, and see if you have space in those areas to create a backup. I like the cloud backups because they are more often automatic. You
Right.
don't have to think about them, which is key. If you have to think about it, then your backups are going to be out of date.
Right. Yeah. Or you have to push a button or take some sort of action on a regular basis and you don't realize how many days go away. And sometimes my clients will ask me, well, how many days in between the last backup should I back up again? I said, what's your pain point?
Yeah.
So if you did a lot of work on Sunday and then you don't back up for a month, you're going to lose all that time, because those files aren't backed up. So, a daily routine may be too much. A weekly, may be just right. So you have to figure out how much new content or edits you're making to get those files backed up. Because really, once your system's backed up, it's minimal how long it takes then to keep you backed up moving forward. It's that
Yeah.
initial backup that can take a long time. So,
Yeah. And stick a note in your calendar, a reminder. If you decide to do it weekly, set the reminder for weekly, but then also, like Susan said, if you've done a ton of work, say today, just back up when you're done and then continue on with your weekly. So that's our little PSA
yep,
for today and for every day. I think backup is literally probably the most important thing that we can teach you. If you get
right.
nothing else out of any of these podcasts, that's the one.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's continue our Jeopardy. I
Yeah,
hope you
so
guys
today,
liked
yeah,
our last episode.
we decided to just dive right into Jeopardy part two because we have so many additional questions that we figured, you know what, let's just keep going. Yeah.
All right.
So do you want to go first? Do you want me to go
Sure.
first?
I'll go first. I
Okay.
will take general photo organizing.
General, let me find the list. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. This is a great one to get people started. So you've probably heard us on this podcast talk about creating a digital photo hub right when you're starting. So Susan, what is a digital photo hub and how do I set one up?
Yeah. So you probably are storing your photos somewhere, either on external hard drives, it could be in the cloud, it could be on, multiple computers. And so a digital photo hub is a very specific location that you're going to gather your photos to. So one of the first things that when I'm working with clients is to ask them, okay, pull in all the different places where your photos might live. And this could be, you have to download it from Google. Maybe you have to download it from Dropbox or OneDrive, as we mentioned before, or you tell me, oh, it's in Apple Photos. And so what you would want to do is get all of your photos. If they're in Apple Photos, this may not apply to you, but if you're in some of the other programs and you're preparing to back everything up, well, with Apple Photos, why is it so difficult with Apple Photos?
Everything's difficult.
Because Apple, you can't really see your photos in this blob of a catalog. So if you make a copy of that blob, the photos library blob, that could go in your digital hub so that you can back it up, but it's not something that you could necessarily unpack and get into and see all the images. You would have to do an export or use a third-party tool that allows you to export the files from your photo library from Apple. So, but if you've got, I'm just going to talk to those that, maintain their photos in folders and stuff like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a parent folder called a digital hub, and then under that would be a folder that the folder name or title should represent where those images are coming from. So if you've got a bunch of images that you downloaded from Dropbox or OneDrive, or you downloaded, you did your Google Takeout, then you would put in the name of where that location is coming from and stick that data in there, so that under that digital hub, you'll have numerous subfolders based on where those files are being backed up. And that is the first step in managing all your digital collection. If you then want to organize it or dedupe it, you've got one basic hub. But before you begin, I always tell people back it up. So you're going to get another hard drive and you're going to back up. Once you've copied everything into that main digital hub parent folder, you're going to back that up to another hard drive and you're going to put that away on the shelf. So as you're working on this one original copy, should you really mess up, which as you're beginning, you could, think this deduping program very well, and then all of a sudden you just got rid of a burst of images. So if you were trying to take a picture of your daughter in playing soccer or something, and you were taking her numerous pictures as she was making a goal, some deduping programs, if you're not paying attention, you can get rid of those similars. So you always have that backup copy on the shelf if you want to start over. So a digital hub basically means it's a gathering place where you're going to put all of your originals before you begin to dedupe and organize that collection of yours.
The only thing that I would add, I think, well, two things I would add. One, as you download each of the sources, I would put the date in the folder name
Yes,
so
so
that you
you know the
know.
last time that images got taken out of that repository.
Yes, actually, there's three things I would add. The second thing I would do, and this only applies if you are on a Mac, is I always, if I'm copying things from other areas of the Mac or of the computer, I'll always add a color tag to that folder so that I know that that has been copied over. So that later on, I'm not looking through and find like a year from now, looking through and saying, huh, did that get copied? Did that get added to the hub? So I always add a purple tag by, you right click on the folder, you'll see tags, or you highlight the folder and you go up to file and you'll see it. And then the only other thing I guess I would add is if you are an Apple user and you're staying in Apple, so you're
Yeah.
going to gather everything and everything is going into Apple, you can just ignore for now putting Apple in your hub for the
Yep.
reasons that you stated. Because you don't need to pull it out if you're going to just put it back in, and you can run certain dedupes on that as it is. If you're going to move it, then you do need to pull it out. And
Right.
probably the best way, if you are for sure moving out of Apple, is to export it. And there are some apps and things that can help you with that. But yeah, a digital hub is, and I have found when I have clients that are doing it themselves with a little bit of help, even just creating that digital hub makes people feel so much better. They're like, okay, I have everything in one spot and I have it backed up. So not only in case you screw up, which can happen for a variety of reasons, but say that you create your hub and you just don't have time for a few months. Well, you've got two copies of it now. All of your stuff is protected, at least up
Yeah.
into that date. So it
Yeah.
does take a lot of stress off, and that is the number one step. I guess the
Yeah.
number one step is identifying where everything is, but the number one action step would be to put it all in that hub.
Just one central location that you know where it's at. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
All
Okay.
right. What do you
I
want?
I am going to take, what should I take here? Um, there was a question that I'm going to do print. We'll do prints. We'll move from digital to prints to
Okay.
something else.
So, what's the best way to safely remove photos from those old magnetic sticky albums?
Ah, the old magnetic sticky album. Everybody's favorite. I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this show, you probably have some.
Yeah.
Everybody has some. It's where, you pull back that sheet and they were so great because you could just plop the photos in and they
And
stayed in
they'd stick there.
place and they would stick there. You put the little plastic back over. That's great. That's great. The problem is if you pull out those albums now, they're probably yellow, the pages. Like they're not pretty anymore.
Yeah.
And if you want to digitize them or you want to pull the photos out because those albums take up a lot of space, sometimes the photos pop right out because the glue has dried up completely.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have not. And
Yeah.
sometimes you start to pull on a little corner and the whole photo rips,
Yeah.
or sort of the front of the photo comes off, but
And the paper's
the
stuck forever.
paper's stuck behind. Yeah. So we deal with these a lot, and there are a lot of different things you can try. The one thing I would say is if it is really stuck, like really, really stuck, and none of the things we talk about here work, bring it to a professional. Get it scanned first before you start pulling things out. And I
That
would actually
that
suggest
is
if you're,
very important.
yeah, even if you're doing it on your
Yeah.
own, at the very, very least, take photos with your phone of those pages
Yeah.
before, you start pulling stuff out because you never really know what's going to happen. But if you start pulling it out and you realize these are ripping or I just cannot do that, find a professional in your area. You can go to thephotomanagers.com and find one there. Susan and I also obviously do this, but have them do it because it will save you so much frustration and you don't want your photos to be destroyed. That's an extreme case, or if it's just taking too long and you're losing patience. But if you have an album where, they are sticking, but you feel like you can kind of get them out, there are some things that you can try. So I have some show and tell here in
Ooh,
case,
show
because
and
this
tell.
question comes up all the time. So I was not surprised. So there are some very inexpensive tools you can use. This is the first one. This is literally like a cake thing, when you're trying to slice cakes and whatever, and you put this under to get it out. This thing works really well. I don't remember how much it was, but not a lot. And you can slide it under the corners and slowly like seesaw. This it doesn't show very well on
Yeah.
Zoom, but you essentially slowly seesaw your way back and forth underneath the photos
Yeah.
from one corner down to the other corner very carefully, to lift the photo off the page. So this is one of my favorite. I don't know what this is called, but we'll figure
A
it out.
spatula of some
It's
sort.
it's some kind of special spatula. We'll
Yeah.
figure it out and stick it in the show notes. Another one I found is this one. This one was made by Creative Memories. It has a point at the top, which is great for trying to, if you can't even get under that corner,
Mm-hmm.
or you've done it so much that you're starting to really hurt underneath your fingernail if you've been using your fingers. You can get the end up with this, and then you can use this other end, which is very thin, to slide under. And because this one is super thin, sometimes this works a little better than the one I just showed, which
Yeah,
is
the other one had a
thicker.
little bit of, thickness to it.
Yeah, it does. You need to get a good corner up before
Right.
you can use this one. So this
Yeah.
one is for the easier photos. This one is for the harder photos, and it's thin and gets thicker, so you can actually slide this end in and it will lift the page, the same sort of seesawing action. You can also, if those aren't working, you can stick the page in the freezer for a little bit. I wouldn't leave it there for too long. And I would stick it in a big
Plastic
Ziploc or
bag.
a
Yeah.
plastic bag or something. So you don't really know what's on that glue and you don't really want it mixing in with your food. So I would get one of those big, big Ziplocs and shrink wrap it and stick it
Yeah.
in your freezer for a little bit because sometimes that will make the glue just brittle enough that you can pull the photo off using the other thing. Sometimes after that, the photo will just pop right off.
Yeah.
Some people also use heat. they'll
Yeah.
use a hair dryer.
I've done that. You have to be
Yeah,
careful
very
because it'll
careful.
start to curl and do damage to the photo itself. So,
Yeah.
applying heat enough to get that corner up might help. I've done that.
Yeah, and I think with that, if you've got it still, you still have to get the corner up a little bit
Yeah.
first, and then you hold the corner up with one of these tools
Yep.
and you blow the air
Underneath.
underneath
Yep.
the
Yep.
photo.
Yep.
And again, not for very long at all. It's
Yeah.
just like they always tell you, don't use the high heat on your hair. Don't use that super high heat on your photos either. Just very briefly, just enough to try and get
Loosen it
it
up.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my tool, which I don't have presently with me, but if you are a tool person, a 5-in-1 painter's tool is what I like
Five
to
and one
use.
painter's tool. Okay. Does
And
that have an edge on it? Is that,
yeah, it's a
yeah.
very sharp, almost blade-like edge.
Ah.
And what I like is it's approximately the width of most photos. So it's like 4 or 5 inches, or
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
4 inches, maybe at the most. And so it's great, not only for scraping paint off the windows, but if you need to scrape and get underneath a photo. But again, I use it very gingerly because
Mm,
that sharp blade can cut your photos. So make sure that you've got a photo of that image, that you've
yeah.
either scanned that photo album page before or you've taken a picture with your camera or something. Because, yeah, once it's cut, then you're going to be looking for restoration help.
Yeah, actually, there's another tool that I use sometimes, which is similar to that, but not quite as sharp, which is a dough cutter, which
Oh,
is about this wide, has a rounded handle, but then it's just a flat sheet of metal. It's
yeah.
about the same. It's not quite as sharp. I tend to cut myself, so the super sharp tools are not, the last thing you want to do is cut yourself and then get blood all over the photos you're trying to keep. It's not pretty. So that's why I tend to use that. But the dough cutter is another one that would
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
pretty
I can see
well.
where that would help. Yep.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
similar because if you can get the edge up, you can slide the whole thing
Yep.
under it, under
Exactly.
it
That's
together.
that's the point. And just know it's going to take you an hour, maybe a half hour to get through your entire album. So patience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can take a long time. So, I would definitely, go slow and put on some soothing music because the frustration level will rise as you try and do it. But yeah, but one thing to remember too, I guess, is that if you are removing the photos, like you can scan the photos without removing them. So if you want to keep your albums, because I do have people that want to keep their albums there's a whole variety of reasons you would do that. You don't need to pull them out to scan them. You can
Right.
still scan them using a camera or a flatbed and do the individual photos. But if you want to get rid of the album because you want the photos in something more archivally safe,
Yeah.
or you want them in boxes, they
Or
take
even a
up less
smaller
room.
profile. Yeah.
Exactly. Take up less room, stick them in a box.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to want to remove them.
Absolutely. All right. Good.
All right. All right, Susan, what do you want?
Um, well, let's do scanning and digitizing
Okay, scanning and
since
digitizing.
we're talking about scanning.
Yeah. Okay. Here's your question. Should I keep the original scans after editing or restoring?
So, my scans, because I shoot with a camera and I do camera scanning, they come in as a raw file. And for me personally, when I do my own stuff, um, I can't do much with that raw. It's great, but it's not going to hold my metadata. It's not a file type that is, easily manageable across platforms. So,
Mm.
ultimately you want to export that out as a high resolution JPEG and then take action on it. So I will have that JPEG, which is smaller than my raw file, to work on and keep. Now I will keep the restoration file. So because sometimes I use Photoshop to do my restoration, and I'll have lots of layers and stuff, and it
Mm.
makes a very large Photoshop file or maybe a TIFF file. And if this is an image that I want to sometime maybe go back to, I would keep both. But oftentimes when I'm making these changes, I move on. So if I've If I've done my color correcting and everything, I want to bake that into that image and save it as a JPEG and put it in my catalog to enjoy it.
I do the same. And one reason actually not to keep those original files is confusion
Yep.
later on. It's not remembering that you already have those
Yep. And you took
somewhere
action on them and yeah.
in the final.
Well,
Yeah.
when you think of those original, like for me, they're 45 megs sometimes. They're huge. And
Yeah.
a JPEG could be 8 megs,
Yeah.
when everything is said and done. So, um, talk
They're
about
huge and
space.
you don't want to share them. For people doing it at home, if you are scanning with a like a
Flatbed or
flatbed or
auto
a
feeder.
feed scanner,
Yeah.
you can make those edits and things right to the file that you're getting because you're most likely scanning to JPEG or maybe TIFF, depending on what it is, and both those formats can hold the metadata. So you
Yeah.
can just change the date, you can add, a keyword or whatever it is that you want to.
And
So
some of those programs actually do a pretty good job of doing like an auto color on the
yeah,
fly. So when you're processing those scans, check out their auto correction and see if it does what you want. And you might just be done as soon as you get done
yeah,
scanning. So
exactly. We probably want to change the names, but other than
yes,
that, yeah, and
yeah.
the dates, yeah, yeah.
All right. What's next?
Okay, I will take surprise me.
Okay. Should I keep location on when I take photos? Oh, this is a good question. I really like the map view, but not sure about the privacy issues. Yeah,
Oh, that is a really, really good question.
right up your alley.
Right up my alley. I love both. I'm a big privacy advocate, top part of a course on it, but I also love map view. And I will say that for many years, I did not have GPS on my photos. My DSLR does not have GPS, and I've had that camera for quite some time. So anything I take with that does not have a location, period. Um, my phone, I kept that off for a long time for privacy reasons. And a few years ago, when I decided, okay, I'm going to whip my own collection into shape, it really annoyed me that I did not have the GPS on.
Oh,
Like it really, really annoyed me. And I went through and I added it wherever possible because you can add it later.
later. Yeah,
So I think there are privacy considerations. I think it depends a little bit on the photos that you're taking. If you are on vacation and you are taking photos, I put it on always when I'm on vacation. And the reason is I don't tend to share those photos while I am on vacation. I'm not taking a photo of, say, Pompeii in Italy and sharing it right away so that people would guess that one where I am anyway. That's a bad
yes,
example. I am not taking a photo of me and my family somewhere in Italy and sharing it immediately anyway,
yeah,
because I tend not to like to advertise that I am away from my home on vacation. So those get
right.
shared when I get back. If you were going to share a photo like that immediately, and it wasn't right obvious where you are, if you have that GPS data on, depending on how you share it, if it gets, sort of sent out, people will know exactly where you are and they will know that you are not home.
If you don't change the settings before you
Exactly.
share. And
Correct. If you
yeah,
don't change the settings, which we've talked about before, and if you're posting it on social media will actually strip that anyway. Although I still say it's not great practice to post a photo where you are obviously in another country or another place at the time you are gone, because who knows who sees that and they might know you're not home. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I keep it on. Actually, I keep it on all the time, but I'm also careful about where those photos are going and when.
right.
I have resigned myself to the fact that Apple probably already knows where I am at every given moment, whether I'm taking photos or not, as do phone companies, because AT&T, my provider, if I make a call, they know where I am. So I have sort of resigned myself to the fact that I am being tracked all the time geographically, and I really like the data. I love map view. It is my favorite view because I love to travel.
Yeah.
So if I, need a little pick me up, I open my photos and look at the map and be like, okay, where should I go next? But
Yeah.
I am quite careful about when and how I share that. I don't send that information out there when I don't need to. So
Yeah,
I
you and
think
I
about
did
it.
this in one session where we looked at images and I sent you one of mine and you realized you couldn't see any location on it.
Yes.
And I realized between my two devices, my Pixel Android and my iPhone Apple device, that I had already predetermined the settings so that the address is not shared when I share photos, but they are there. They're part of the
Yeah.
image. And so I thought, cool, I was already set up right. So just take a look at your
Yeah.
devices and know that you can turn it off on the fly as you share.
Mm. That episode actually was with Tammy Copenhaver.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was episode 28, which I believe is our October 1st episode
Yeah.
when that aired. And actually, if that interests you, you should go back because Susan literally on the fly figured out where those settings are in the Android phone. But I do think it's an excellent question because you really do need to think about what's in your photos. And it's not just the map.
Right.
I just have to come back to this for a sec. And we did talk about in that privacy episode, it's not just the map, but if you're taking a picture of your child's first day of kindergarten and they have those little signs that say, I'm
First day.
Tammy and
Yeah.
it's my first day of kindergarten at Smith Elementary and I like butterflies. I mean, if you're sharing that, the map makes no actual difference. People can figure out exactly where you are anyway.
Right. Or you
So
take a
you got
picture
to
in
think
front
about
of
the
your
whole thing.
house,
Yeah.
with the street address. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you
Yeah.
keep it on, Susan? The GPS?
Yeah, I do for uh my information. I love the map view as well. I'm kind of
Hmm.
like you in that way, but I was heartened to know that I had already turned it off when I share. So
Yeah,
those were sharing options that you can
yeah.
turn off. So yeah,
Most people don't need that when you're sharing a photo.
right.
I mean, a lot of people won't realize they even get the information, but there's really no
And
reason to
the other
share it.
thing to think of, because you had mentioned that, like some of the social media, they strip it out, but they strip it out before they present it. If you give it to them,
Hmm.
that means they have it.
Yes,
They're just not then extending that information publicly, but
right.
you're feeding them more information about you. So
Yeah,
just to know about that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, God knows what they have. They have everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
Susan, what would you like?
Let's see. What have I not done? Let's do digital.
Digital. Okay, let's see. Can I, well, this will go correct, continue on with our sort of privacy thing is, can I organize my photos without using facial recognition?
You can. It's, you know, something that's built in, I think, now with almost every software. And if it's not built in, you kind of poo-poo that, that piece of software at the moment. You're like, really? It doesn't do that? But yeah, if you don't want to start facial recognition and tagging in your photos, you could still organize your photos. Is it going to be harder? I would say so. Many of the programs, because everything is based around date, if you scan images in and you do facial recognition and you're looking at that person's collection of images that you've tagged, if you're looking at it in a view that you can sort chronologically, you'll immediately begin to see photos that you've tagged that should not be at the top if it's
Mhm.
2025. And so, for organizing purposes, knowing who is in these photos can immediately help you to date them. So when I teach Mylio, for example, because face tagging is usually fun and it's the easiest thing you can do. It's one of the first things I ask my clients. If you're going to start organize your photos, start
Mhm.
with the facial recognition because from there you can do a variety of different filtering based on person and date and then start to put them in the right order after that. So that, does it go hand in hand? I say so, but you know, you don't have to take that time and do facial recognition if you don't want to, but it's getting really easy to do. And I don't know why you wouldn't, because once you face tag, then you can add those keywords as a keyword about that person and do even further sorting on your collection. So yeah,
Yeah, it makes searching so much easier. Uh,
absolutely.
if you're like me, I am regularly searching for photos of my family together. There's not that many. Um, and so without face tagging, you would have to add a keyword or something as they were going in, which is a lot of work.
It
But
is.
when you're using facial recognition, now I have a saved search that's literally, the four of us and the dog, or the four of us without the dog. But normally, I mean, who are we kidding? The dog's in all the photos.
Right.
So that I can find them. And because it's a saved search, if I were to take another one tomorrow, I don't have to do anything. It'll automatically pop up in that saved search. So you can really save yourself a lot of time by using it. Just be aware. So it depends on what software you're using, but there are some little things that are quirky about it. And I say this because I live in Illinois. So if you use Amazon Photos and you are in Illinois, you cannot use facial recognition because of
Oh,
a variety of lawsuits. You're not allowed to use it. Amazon does not offer it in Illinois.
interesting. I did
So
not
there's a
know
few
that.
little quirks there, but if you have it, and again, in terms of privacy, think about what platform you're using, how secure it is, how comfortable you are. I don't have Google well, I don't use Google Photos, so it's not an issue. But like my face tagging is all done in Mylio, which is done on my machine. And Apple's is also done on your individual devices. It's not
Mhm.
done in the Apple cloud. So I'm a little more comfortable having that attached. So you can think about those things. But I think now, if you really want to organize your library and make it fully searchable, you've got to embrace facial
Yeah,
recognition.
I
Or you
agree.
can take a very long time and add keywords.
Doing the workaround. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Agree.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you
Okay.
like?
Let's see. Where shall we go here? We'll do general photo organizing.
Should I use folders, albums, or tags, or all of them? I love that. I get
I
that question all the time.
Well, I get that question all the time too. I don't think people don't always understand what the differences are between those things. So I use all of them. I use them for different things. So to start with, what's the difference between them? Generally, it depends on what software you're using
Yes.
because the terminology might be different.
Or
But
the words may be the same, but how they apply it with that software is unique.
yeah, exactly. So folders generally are where the photo actually lives. If you have one copy of your photo, it lives in the folder. So if you're using Finder or Explorer, for example, you have a folder and you have files in there, and that's where they are, and you go to that folder to find them. In Mylio, it works exactly the same way as a folder. However, if you are in Apple Photos,
Yeah.
a folder is literally just an organizing container. Nothing lives in the folder itself, which brings me to albums because they're similar for Apple Photos. Albums in most software, probably all photo organizing software, are literally just collections of things. They're not moved anywhere. So you can have the same photo in as many albums as you want. It's essentially just a pointer that
Yeah. It's a
says,
virtual pointer or
yeah,
a virtual reference to the same image in your library.
exactly.
It's and so I want to make sure people know that there's no data really there. The image is not there. So if you put stuff in a folder, I'm sorry, in an album, you create an album, it's like a ghost link.
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could delete your album and all of your photos are still there. If
Yep.
you delete your folder, you're probably losing everything in it.
Yeah. You're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, not an Apple. So an Apple folders are merely just a collection of albums. So they don't have that same idea, but they're helpful for organizing. So then the question becomes, what do you use for each one? My folders are almost always just chronologically based. They are either like a year month or they are a specific trip, which is a one single moment in time. And that is because when you're dealing with dates, there's only one date. You can't confuse it. You can't think which folder or album or whatever should it be in. So my folders are probably just about all chronological. But I also like albums because sometimes I like to collect things across time and space. So, for example, I've mentioned about a gazillion times how much I like travel and birds. So I have albums. So I have a separate area in my photo organizing of my own collection of travel all together so that I have, any trips to specific continents or different areas are all together. I have an album for US and inside or North America, and inside that I have all of our albums for each one of our trips within North America. I have an album for Africa in there is that, and it's mostly because I like to go to one spot and see all of those at the same time. I
Yeah.
also keep albums for favorites of things. So if you have favorite photos of family members, you don't really want to pull those out and put them in a separate folder because you might want them for other things. So
Right.
instead, I have an album for favorites of each child and favorites of, the family, bird favorites of
Yep.
various kinds, my owl favorites, my hummingbird favorites, that kind of thing. So albums are great across time. And just know, though, that when you're using albums, if you were to switch photo organizing systems, they don't come with you.
Right.
They are distinct only to that particular one. You can add a keyword, which brings us to tags.
All right.
Which are
Before you go to tags, though,
yep, okay.
one other idea for albums could be temporary things such as
Yes.
a project. So if your child says, Mom, I need a bunch of photos of me when I was little, you
Hmm.
could, create that temporary album. Or if you want to do a book and you're trying to curate your library and just pull some good ones into an album to create that book, you can also use albums in that way.
Yeah, I do that all the time. That was a great, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful. And then you can just delete it when you're done
Yeah.
or not
When you're
delete it
done.
because albums take up no space.
Right. Again,
So
it's just a ghost link.
exactly. And you can make nested ones usually. So I actually have an album called Projects, and within that are, all the various things. And then the last part of that are tags or keywords, which most people use interchangeably. And it's essentially just adding more information to allow you to search and
Hmm.
identify. So it is that, and tags and keywords do stick to the photo most of the time, depending on what software you are using. If you're trying to do that in Google, they don't if you were to export. But if you're doing that in Apple, it will export if you export a certain way. If you do it in Mylio, it does. Forever, it does. So just something to keep in mind. But they can be very helpful. So I tend to use them where the AI in the photo organizing software is not going to find what I need it to find. I use this example all the time, but my older son was a fencer with a sword, the sport. And there's no organizing software I've tried that will find those photos. If you put in fencing, you get white picket fences and that kind of thing. So
It's
that is
very
something,
literal.
it's very literal. Yeah. So that is a great example of why you would want a
Yeah.
keyword because you're not going to be able to find those any other
Right.
way. I
The other thing
keyword,
is like if you don't have location on it because your camera didn't
yes.
take location information to embed in the photo, then adding a tag but because of location of where you're at is very
Yep.
helpful. So,
Absolutely.
it's data about the data. So if you're trying to pull out the image later, you have to give it information so that you can then get it back out of the
Hmm.
system about that image, is usually how I explain it. So describe
Yeah.
it context wise and maybe answer the who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah. I mean, if these are photos you ever want to search for,
Yep.
then add. So I have, because I started doing this before AI was as good as it is, I have keywords and tags for things like sunset and sunrise. Every single one of my birds in my collection is has its own tag of what it
Yep.
is. And don't laugh, but I use that on a regular basis
Yeah.
is how will I find it. travel photos, I do it a lot. I'll add captions sometimes about what's happening there, or if we saw something interesting, I'll add that too. But it's really, how will you think about with your photos, how are you going to find those later?
Right.
If you can find it easily with AI, something like birthday is usually very easy to find because it picks out birthday cakes and stuff, so you can find what you need. You might not need, but if you are doing something that is harder to find later, like the fencing example, the birds example, that kind of thing, then you might want to add a keyword. There's always a tension between how much time do you really want to spend on this and where's your biggest return on investment?
Right.
And that's what you think of. You don't need to keyword tag everything in your library.
No. Only the top priority of what's going on in the image. It's usually who and where
Yeah.
and what. Those three
Hmm.
things for me anyway.
Yeah, same.
All right.
Okay, what should we do two? I think you started. So let's do two more, one for you and one for
Okay.
me. So, what do you want?
Um, well, let's keep on digital here.
On digital. Okay, let me go there. Here you go. I am so overwhelmed by my digital collection. I don't even know where to start. What should I do? We've never had that question from anybody.
Yeah, right. So first off, it's figuring out what your goal is. I always start there because when you're disorganized, there's got to be usually some reason that you've gotten where you're at. And maybe it's too many cloud backup solutions and you don't know where your originals are. And so what I would do is have a conversation and figure out what's your goal if we were to, if I were to help you with this digital collection. And oftentimes people aren't really sure because they've never had things organized. And
Mm.
so what I would say is, um, have that conversation of what your goal is, and maybe it's to gather all these extraneous locations of where your photos are, put it in a digital hub, and then organize, dedupe it, and organize it. And then, if you are not sure even how to begin there, then you have to go back to, again, what's your goal? Maybe it's to stay in Apple and evaluate where your photos are everywhere else and get those into the Apple environment and do your deduping in that environment. So, everything is based on, what's important to you and what your goals are. Maybe it's to add keywords so that you can pull up the images that, you're not doing that death scroll. Everybody's, on their phone going, I know where that photo is. Give me just a minute. And so, maybe that's the goal, just to be able to find things better. But something else I was going to say, oh, and it just left me. Where'd it go? Um,
You are absolutely right about the goal.
yeah.
Most people
Oh,
don't think about that.
yeah. No, people
Yeah.
aren't goal thoughts with photos oftentimes. But then once you know that, it's all right, how do you want your life to be? So when you take photos, what do you want to see happen? And it should be automatic. So once you figure out, what those digital organizing goals are, then figure out what your digital flow is. And that will prevent you from having further angst and overwhelm in the future, because once things are organized, you're going to have to figure out what that flow is going to be so that things go into your library properly. They're not dupes. You clean up the trash, and then everything is backed up.
Yeah, that is so true. I think you hit the nail on the head because we get a lot of people who just say, I want to organize my photos. My photos are a mess.
Yeah.
That's not enough. You have to think a little bit. And those are the first questions we always
Yeah.
ask is, well,
Further.
what is your goal? Because your goal shouldn't just be, I have too many photos. I want to get less, because the issue is rarely that you have too many photos. It's that you can't find the ones you're
Yeah.
looking for. So I have no issue with people who have gazillions of photos. That does not bother me. The problem is if they're just hiding in a one spot or all over the place, if you can't find what you need. So think about your goal and what are the kinds of things that you want to find. Is your goal really to have fewer photos? And it might be because you might have a space issue. But I think that generally speaking, the real goal is you need to be able to find what you're looking for. So then you have to figure out the flow to get there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you want to get rid of duplicates. That can be a goal as
That
well.
could be a goal. But usually people is for me it's finding the important memories of my
Hmm.
life, So it could be, celebrations, could be holiday get-togethers, could be finding, your own pictures of yourself when you were little, in your collection easily, things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
Exactly.
good.
That should be everybody's first question when they're looking at their photos is why do I want to do this? Where do I want my end to be? Okay, so I guess I am finishing us up. Let's see. I will go for, we'll just stick with digital. We will start and end on digital.
Okay. Um All right, let's do what is the difference between keywords and captions? Should I use both? How are they different? That's confusing sometimes.
It is. It's like a continuation of the last question that you asked me, which is good though, because I think that historically there was probably a bigger difference than there is now. Um, for almost all photo organizing software, you can search by either one at the same time. So if you just put in a search term, it will search your photos for keywords or captions and pull up, whatever it is you're searching for at the same time. So I think the distinction is less important than it used to be, but they are slightly different. So and first of all, you have to know what your software does. So Apple's a great example of this. If you wanted to add information to your photos and you use Apple Photos, if you are on your phone, you can only add a caption. If you're on your Mac, you could add a caption or a keyword or both. So you have to know what your software does. And if it only does one or the other, I would say don't worry about it and just use what you have. You'll still be able to search. But I tend to think of them as slightly different. I feel like captions, I use them to answer more of the story of what is happening in that photo.
And
If
and why
there's,
do you say that the caption's different? Because it's
well,
when
well,
you
you
say
have a
a
lot
story.
more space. Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
you can literally write a paragraph or you can write a whole long story. So sometimes when I'm with my in-laws, for example, and I've been scanning their collection and I pull one up and I say, what is happening here? And I will put whatever it is that they say in the caption. It's like full stream of consciousness, frankly.
right.
Um, Whereas keywords, I feel like are much more surgical. They're sort of a quick hit. So I use keywords for like bird names or usually one word at a time, and not the long
Yeah.
story. Uh, I find it's easier for searching depending on what you're looking for. You should also think about where this stuff is visible in your software. So, like I said, an Apple on your phone, if you are mostly a phone person, you want to use captions for pretty much everything because you won't be able to see the keywords on your phone,
Right.
but you can see those captions anywhere. And to find them, since we're there on Apple, you literally have your photo open and swipe up, and you'll see the little caption area where you can add. If you're using other software, I do find on most software the caption is more visible. It's sort of easier to find, or it's towards the top. So if,
Well, and they call it different things.
yes, it could be
So
called
Lightroom or
description.
Mylio, it may be a title or it may be a description field.
Yeah.
So, you have to figure out, if there's a character limit in the field that you're working on, then it's probably a title.
Yeah.
If there's not a character limit, then it's probably a description or caption. And the field could be named differently, but when you migrate from one photo software program to another, you'll be able to tell if that information came across because
Mhm.
it's usually in is it the EXIF or IPTC? I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But it's a standard that the photo has fields in which to capture that information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to use titles a little bit differently. I don't use titles very often at all.
Yeah, I'm
I
not a
find
title
they're harder to
person.
find on a lot of software, like Apple, for example. You never see it. Where you do have it, like Mylio has the ability to add titles. Very, very rarely do I use it. And when people ask me they do want to use them, I tend to say it as more like think of it as the newspaper headline.
Yep.
It's a
Yeah, a
limited
short
sort of
description.
short description, but you really don't need to use all the things.
Yeah.
I would say if you're starting out, keep it simple and, use the captions to give the story and the context. If you want to be faster, use the keywords because a lot of times the keywords also will sometimes have you can just pull up when you start typing. It will autofill for you, which can make things a lot
Yeah.
easier
And
and more
keywords are
consistent.
not a sentence, just to be clear.
Correct.
Keywords are 1, 2, 3 word combinations separated by commas typically.
Yeah.
So those 3 words stay together or the 2 words stay together.
Yeah.
And they're usually descriptive. So, what is that, like nouns? So
Right, probably not verbs, right? It's
yeah.
not. Although I will say, so here's some examples. This going back to the snowy owl from the very beginning of this podcast. My snowy owl pics have a keyword called snowy owl. If they are flying, because capturing birds in flight is a particular thing that I like to attempt to do and don't do particularly well, I actually have a keyword called flying because I do occasionally want to find those pictures specifically. And then the caption, most of them don't have captions, but my snowy owl, the first day I saw it actually does have a caption that said first, lifer sighting of a snowy owl because it was just something I want to remember.
Yeah.
It was pretty exciting for
When you
me.
first saw it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I suppose I could have a keyword called lifer too, but I haven't done that.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be good. Yeah, that's
yeah,
another. So
I
whatever
suppose.
works in your mind, because some people are not they don't think chronologically.
Yeah,
That really is not something that is important to them. So then you're going to have to, dial it up a notch in the keywords, basically.
yeah. Yeah, but you don't have to use them.
No?
Use them if you want. Going back to the last question, I tend to use them more for things that the photo organizing software itself will not find for me. I don't use keywords for location anymore because I have the GPS on.
Yeah.
So, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, except for the old ones, the
Yeah. Well,
scans.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
gone it through, like I said, I've gone through an added GPS
You're
because I
funny.
am
Yeah.
a little bit of a geek like that. But yeah, if they didn't, I would add a keyword that says Paris or Chicago or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun. I really kind of like this
I do
back and
too. I think we'll
forth.
bring it back. Probably not next month. I think two in a
Yeah.
row is probably enough,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think this should be, I think we should definitely come back to this format. And if you have questions, send them in and they'll end up on this list and you'll likely get them answered.
So January when this drops, and you're listening to it, um, that becomes our season 4.
I know. That's so hard to believe. I can't believe this will be our fourth year. So happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, Happy New Year. And I know Allison and I wish from the bottom of our hearts that you continue to do what you can to back up your family photos and preserve them and back up that data. And, that some of the information we've been sharing over the years has been helpful. And let us know if you've got further questions, and maybe it'll become part of our Jeopardy session next time.
Yeah, for sure. Have a happy New Year, everybody. And a
Yep.
great start to 2026.
6. Yeah. Wow. All right, Allison.
All
Another
right.
one's in the can.
Another one's in
Until
the
next
can.
time.
See you next time, Susan.
Bye. That's it for our show today. Remember, you can find this episode on all of your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to click follow so you can stay up to date with the latest in photo organizing. We'll catch you next month.